Now, what I'm going to do without further ado is I am going to attempt yet another technical coup by getting Allison Napius on the phone. Let's call her together and see what happens.
Hello, this is Allison.
Allison, it's perfect. It's unbelievable. I pressed the button. You're on the other end. We're live here, and at least this part of the technical aspect of the show has worked so far so good.
Good.
I am glad to have you on, and let me tell people now that you're here that you are the senior editor and tasting director of what I call the most prestigious wine publication in the country, Wine Spectator. And you not only write about the stuff, you are the lead taster of wines from Champagne region, from Alsace. Oh, I want to talk to you about that because I'm a big Pinot Gris guy. And Beaujolais, and you're also tasting from wine regions around Italy. And I also said before you came on that when I come back in my next life, hopefully I can pick up that job if you're not still doing it.
Or at least get to taste all the wine.
Yes. How? Tell everybody kind of how you before we talk about the actual wine and the pairings and the perfect wines for this time of year. Tell the folks how you ended up in this aspect of the business.
Well, I long ago thought that I wanted to own a restaurant someday, and went to college to study hotel and restaurant administration. When I got out of that, I started in New York City as a manager at a great restaurant there, Tribeca Grill. And after a year of being there, I realized what I was most excited about was wine and not as much the restaurant industry. So I was looking around for an opportunity to really dive deep into the wine world, and I saw an entry-level position at Wine Spectator, unpacking boxes, cleaning glasses, setting up tastings, and luckily was hired for that position. So that was 18 years ago, and I've kind of grown up there, learned about wine, and ultimately found that I was interested in becoming a taster for the magazine. So I trained with some of the already established tasters on the methodology of the magazine, which is we taste all of our wine blind. Everything's in a brown paper bag. We don't know the producer. We don't know the price. We basically just know where the wine is from, what the vintage is, what the grape, and we're assessing it on what the quality is in the glass. So at this point, I'm overseeing our tasting departments in our Napa office and in our New York office.
Nice.
And what we try and do is be comprehensive about each of the regions we're covering, looking at everything from the top producers and the big names down to new upcoming wineries and those wines that you see out in the wine store everywhere, and trying to give our readers an overview on the topic.
Hey, as long as we're on that, by the way, tell the folks. I mean, I know that you kind of have to go out and actually pay for a magazine called Wine Spectator. But if someone wants to kind of check out, online and stuff, or buy, like, where do people get their hands on the most recent issue of Wine Spectator, or at least find it online?
Sure. Well, definitely winespectator.com. We're online. We have a lot of great content there. Everything, you don't have to be an expert. We have lots of introductory material, learn about wine, lots of food and wine pairing, articles about restaurants, wineries, etc. So definitely go online. And then you can buy the magazine. You don't have to subscribe to a whole full year at first, but you could buy an issue in a lot of retail locations, in Total Wines all over the country, newsstands, etc. So there's a lot of opportunities to do that as well. And then additionally, we have some apps available. We have a Wine Ratings Plus app. All of those wine reviews, we're doing about 18,000 wines a year. In total, more than 350,000 wine reviews you can get via our Wine Ratings Plus app. And that's really the best thing to have in hand when you go to a wine list or a wine store. You can look up and see exactly what our tasters thought of it. We also have our X values, which has a limited number of reviews, but they're focusing more on the wines that you kind of see out there everywhere. So both of those are great resources when you're out on the go and you don't have a magazine in hand.
Got you. Okay, that's cool. And now let's tell the good folks about what to drink wine-wise, especially this time of year, especially leading into Labor Day. You know that I just had a conversation with Joe Heitzberg of Crowd Cow. So obviously, let's just start. We'll expand, but let's just start with the idea of what we want to have. With barbecued kind of beef, whether it's whether it's a steak or a burger or a hot dog. What should we be drinking?
Well, the very general rule of thumb is the fattier the meat or the more flavorful the meat, the bolder the wine, the more structured the wine you want to have. So if you're thinking about beef, if you have something that's a little bit leaner, if it's like a sirloin, you could have something that's a little bit more medium bodied, like a Tempranillo from Spain. That's a Rioja or Ribera del Duero if you're out buying them, or a Merlot from California. But if you're talking about like a ribeye, you have a lot of marbling, it's really rich. You want something with more tannins. That's the structure that you get from the stems and the stems and the skins of the grape that gives it the structure. So Barolo from Italy, Cabernet, or Bordeaux. And then if you're thinking about like pork or chicken, those are two things that you see a lot of times on the grill during Labor Day barbecues. Those kind of go different ways. I think it kind of depends on what sauces maybe you have basing them or what you marinated them in. But in that case, you're thinking about bolder flavors. You probably want a bolder wine. If it's just the straight chicken on the grill with some nice olive oil, salt, pepper, you can probably do white, rosé, a lighter red. So there's more of a range there.
Do you ever get, by the way, I mean, I don't, do you ever get like excited about drinking a beer? Like I'm thinking here hot dogs, and I'm thinking like if somebody who's tasting wine for a living, you must be just thrilled with a cold beer periodically when you're having a hot dog on the grill. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. And even honestly, sometimes you get done a long day of tasting and you may have just we probably only taste about 15 to 20 wines at a time, but even so, you taste that many wines, you're really focusing on them. And sometimes all you want afterwards is a beer. And definitely with hot dogs with hamburgers, I think that's, as much a traditional pairing as a good glass of Cabernet with a big, rich steak.
All right, good. Now, so I happen to be broadcasting remotely from the Hamptons, where it's almost illegal not to have rosé in your home here. So let's broaden from the whole steak meat barbecue thing. Tell me some more. What else do we want to be having, and what are the kind of the classic pairings this time of year?
Well, so when I said that I would be happy to come join you, as I am, I took some notes on what I'm going to bring to my Labor Day cookout this weekend, and ding, 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 number one, rosé.
Okay.
So there you go. I think rosé, given you're talking about it's warm weather, it's hugely popular right now, so it's a huge crowd pleaser if you bring a rosé to a Labor Day cookout. And it also goes with a wide range of food. Talking about the pork and chicken, where I mentioned you have a wider range, definitely. With a hot dog, with a hamburger, it's great. And it's also a very wallet-friendly wine. We reviewed something like 600 rosés this year, and the vast majority of them were $25 or less per bottle. Mm-hmm. So, it just wins on a lot of points. So you can start off with rosé.
Right. And by the way, speaking of that, I have to say that I guess it kind of, I'm no wine expert by any means, so I think it came as, I don't want to say a surprise, but it was a little bit of an eye-opener that I could basically get rosé not only from anywhere. I mean, everybody feels like they need to have it from Provence, but it's not only that you can get rosé from anywhere, but you can get it from so many different grapes. Like I'm enjoying like a Sancerre rosé. I just picked up bottles of rosé from I'm just saying there's like a wide variety of rosés beyond what is kind of the typical central Provençal.
Absolutely. That's part of what's been really interesting to see as the popularity of rosé has grown. It definitely has given so many wine producers this opportunity to explore what they can do with their great varieties that they have growing. So exactly as you said, in Sancerre, a lot of times you're talking about a Pinot Noir. In Spain, they're making it from Garnacha, which is the Spanish version of Grenache, which is often what you see in France, but it's with its Spanish stamp. And then all over Italy, they're making it from, these native varieties. So There's really a lot of different expressions of it. And I think with the different grape varieties, you sometimes get a little bit more structure. Some will be a little bit creamier because they have less tannins in the skins, that sort of thing. But, at the end of the day, you're talking about a light-bodied, refreshing wine, and that's what most of us are looking for in our rosé.
Okay, go back to your list, and let's go into some of the other things that you might be bringing to your Labor Day parties.
Okay, so the next thing I was thinking about is, we talked about pairing a big ribeye steak with a rich Cabernet. But when you're standing outside and it's 85 degrees, I don't think that any of us really want that big, rich glass of Cabernet. So a great thing to think about is a lighter-bodied, fruity red that you can actually serve a little bit cold. So a classic example of this is from the Beaujolais region in France. It's south of Burgundy, about 4 hours southeast of Paris. And they make these round, easy-drinking, fruit-forward reds that are really terrific when they're served cold. And if you're not a Francophile and you prefer something domestic, you could try this with maybe a California Pinot Noir. I'm not talking about like the $100 single vineyard bottle Pinot Noir that your boss gave you as a gift or something, but something a little easier drinking, like maybe the Bogle Pinot Noir or Murphy Good. These are, again, fruit forward, lots of berries, lots of cherries. And so when you add this element of a little bit of coldness to it, it gives it a little structure that makes it really good with food, actually.
I think it's a really super excellent point. You are the expert, but I think people in general have a tendency to serve red wine, too warm in general. I mean, I'm not suggesting that it's all going to be chilled, but even the stuff that's coming out of the cellar is coming out at a whole lot less cooler than it is when it reaches room temp. So, and I would say also that there's some red. I don't want to deviate too far from where you're at, but there's some red that actually wants to be served real cold, and I'm thinking of like sparkling, almost like a sparkling Shiraz as an example. I just I love that, and I certainly that's something that you really want to have cold.
Yes, and it's funny that you mentioned that because you want to know what the third thing on my list was.
I can't even believe how lucky I'm getting today. Go ahead, tell me.
It was not sparkling Shiraz, but close to that, Lambrusco.
Yes.
So this is kind of an out there option, but it could be a lot of fun to bring to a barbecue. It's sparkling red wine from Emilia-Romagna, a central region in Italy. This is the home of bologna and Parmesan cheese. So these are people who are used to drinking wine and eating food. And you serve Lambrusco, as you said, lightly chilled. It has a light, sparkling character to it. And historically, I think there'll be people who remember it as being sweet and fizzy. Today's Lambruscos are dry, they're mouth-watering, they have lots of berry, herb, and spice flavors, all things that go really well with barbecue.
Love that suggestion. And I think because, there's something kind of joyous, if you will, about bubbling, about sparkling, about effervescence. And I think also when it's hot and you bring the temperature down, and I think that's I love that suggestion. Is that one also where, do you just go into a wine store and go, hey, show me some Lambrusco, or are there particular kind of brands or names that we want to be looking for?
Well, I think that, the market for Lambrusco is a smaller growing one. So I'm not saying that every store you go into is going to have one, but I think you'd have a pretty good shot. So in our tastings, I see probably 12 to 15 Lambrusco producers pretty regularly. And I would say that that's what you're primarily going to find in the U.S. market. The one that is kind of available in larger quantities is Lini, Lini. So that would certainly be something to ask for, but I think you could go into any store and ask for Lambrusco, and they're going to direct you towards a good producer. Nice.
Are there other things on your list, Allison?
Well, so those are the wines that, of course, being the person from Wine Spectator, I want to bring something that I have a little story to tell with them and that I think would be interesting.
Right.
But of course, if, for example, you're hosting or you just want to bring something easy that you maybe don't have to search out, like a Lambrusco. For reds, if you're not talking about something you can chill, look again for something with a good amount of fruit to it. So I would recommend a California Zinfandel or maybe a Malbec from Argentina. So these are wines with a little bit more structure, and they'll be great with meat, but they have enough fruit so that if they start warming up a little bit, the fruit's still going to be there, and you're not going to lose it to the structure. So those are some great reds. And then I think if you're looking for a white, I think everyone thinks of like a light crisp white, something like a Pinot Grigio, but I think that there's a lot of room to explore Sauvignon Blanc. So we have Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, a lot of great citrusy, really mouthwatering Sauvignon Blanc, very affordable, widely available. California is making terrific Sauvignon Blanc these days. You usually kind of get a more peachy, fleshy fruit kind of character from California Sauvignon Blancs. And then the French home for Sauvignon Blanc is the Sancerre that you're mentioning, but the white version, so it's made from Sauvignon Blanc. And there you're talking more kind of like herbal characteristics. But what you have in common with these wines is they're usually light-bodied, they're very refreshing, and they're great on a hot day to kind of get that lip-smacking effect.
I will tell you, since you mentioned it, that as a food guy, I have two favorite white wines, and one is Sancerre, which is the one that I would my fantasy. It's not even a fantasy really, because I do it with some regularity. But oysters and clams and nice cold Sancerre is just joyful for me. But you also, I see that you're also the taster for the Alsace region. And it was about 10 years ago that somebody turned me on to like an Alsatian Pinot Gris, and I've been drinking it ever since because I think it's one of the great wines to have with food from my perspective, at least from the white from the white wine side.
Yeah, I mean, Pinot Gris is, especially when you're talking about Pinot Gris from Alsace, it's a very northerly climate, so you're getting a lot of acidity. And when you think about pairing wine with food, in white wines, you're looking for the acidity to be kind of the counterpoint to the richness of the food. In red wines, you're looking for tannins to be that counterpoint. So Alsace Pinot Gris, you've got the acidity. And then the other thing that's really a characteristic of all the grape varieties from Alsace is their minerality. There's kind of like this patchwork of different soil types there, and you get, particularly from Pinot Gris for me, the smokiness. So you've got a smoky base layer, and then oftentimes a lot of ripe fruit from Pinot Gris, depending on the vintage, and the acidity, and all that together definitely makes it a very good wine with food. You're also usually talking light to medium bodied, as opposed to the very light, like Pinot Grigios that we think of from Italy. Right. So there's a little bit more weight, and that gives it more range with food as well.
When you, and this is the technical question, but I'm asking for myself and for everybody else, when you talk about fruit forward, what is that, what does that feel like in your mouth? What makes it fruit forward? What are we getting?
Sure. I mean, basically fruit forward means that when you put that wine, you take a sip, the first thing you're thinking about is the fruit flavor. So at a very basic level, when you eat fruit, it's ripe, it's sweet. So sometimes you might perceive it as sweetness, but it's really, you're getting immediate impact of like berries or cherries or apples or pears, whatever might be specific to that grape variety. It's kind of jumping out at you more so than, for example, like the smokiness of the Pinot Gris that I just spoke of. You know, what we do where I'm sitting and have a glass in front of me and I'm analyzing it and I'm writing, you know, a couple hundred words about it, I'm looking for all the layers there. But when I think about fruit forward, that's where you give it to 10 people and 9 out of 10 of them, the first thing they say is some type of fruit. Right. So, but, you know, where really the fruit is the dominating character of the wine, not to say that it doesn't have other things to it, but that's what jumps out.
Now, because I'm coming to you, or I'm doing this remotely from the Hamptons, it makes me ask this question. How about the wine coming from the east end of Long Island, whether it's here on the South Fork with the Wolfer and the Rosé and Summer in a Bottle, or the more developed wine region on the North Fork? How are we producing out here in this part of the world versus, say, you know, the Napas and the Sonomas and the other wine growing, or the Oregons and Washington State? How are we doing out here? How's the wine industry?
I mean, doing a great job. I think there's been a huge advancement in the Long Island wine industry in the last 20 years that I've seen just really, across the board quality rising, I would say. But it's still a pretty young industry is the thing. So Napa definitely has a head start on them. But the other thing I will say is that the crowd in the Hamptons tends to drink most of the product. So not a lot of it gets out. So, that's a little bit hard to spread the word when you get really excited about a wine you taste from the Hamptons or from the North Fork of Long Island. And it's pretty much all gone before you can recommend it to your national audience. But I think there's definitely some great wines there to try, and a lot of different great varieties, a lot of different styles. So, things to explore.
Excellent. All right. So before I let you go, let's recap for the people the 4 or 5 things that they should consider bringing to as guests to a barbecue this weekend. You had some reds, you had some sparkling, you had some rosés. Just a quick recap from you on.
Sure. So on the lighter side of things, let's think about rosé or white wine, a Sauvignon Blanc, either from New Zealand, from California, from Sancerre, the Loire Valley in France, or from some other wine region. Give it a try. It's a very distinctive, great variety. And then we can think about sparkling red wine, Lambrusco, from the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy. Great with food, great with grilled food. And then moving on, we have light-bodied reds that you can serve chilled, like Beaujolais from France, or like a California Pinot Noir, something very fruity and will benefit from being a little bit cold to make it last in your glass a little longer and pair well with food. And finally, if you want a bigger red, try California Zinfandel or Malbec from Argentina.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Allison Napia. She is your senior editor and tasting director of the prestigious Wine Spectator. Thank you, Allison, again. Always a pleasure to speak with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And
Thank you.
Looking forward to drinking a whole bunch of those wines this weekend.
Absolutely. And, beyond all these recommendations, the most important thing is to enjoy what you're drinking and have fun. So everybody, enjoy your Labor Day barbecues.
Thanks, Allison. Speak to you again.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.